We have an update on the Leon Rose, Rich Paul debacle that is happening with the New York Knicks, as Rich Paul and Klutch Sports do not want their players to be playing for the New York Knicks, so we have to talk about this. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Knicks Digest. It's Chris here, and we are going to jump right into things as we always do, because we got a lot to talk about today. So, Klutch Sports has made it clear that it would prefer if they were to not do business with the New York Knicks front office, which has been reported by multiple sources to the New York Post. Obviously, that's a problem, and not just because Klutch Sports has a ton of important players, two of whom were on the trade block, such as DeJounte Murray and Zach LaVine, but also because you don't want one of the biggest powerhouse agencies against your sports team. This has not really happened in the NBA as far as I know before, so obviously it's pretty problematic that the New York Knicks are one of these teams, and you kind of have to go into why, and the answer is sort of complicated. So let's just jump right in continually and talk about basically what we were first initially talking about, which is Zach LaVine and DeJounte Murray, because this theoretically applies to all Klutch clients, whether they're free agents or potential trade targets, including LaVine and DeJounte Murray. And to be clear, it's a much bigger problem for the Knicks than Klutch. Rich Paul can negotiate with 29 other teams, some with more cap space, more opportunities, and almost all with lower state taxes than the New York Knicks. Here's where things get a little weird. Because if this is financial, because we know it's not personal, and we are going to go into that because Rich Paul used to work for CAA. If it's financial, it gets weird. Because Rich Paul's two best clients in LeBron James and Anthony Davis obviously both play for the Los Angeles Lakers, which is in California, which also has incredibly high state taxes. For instance, LeBron is getting paid, I believe, around $40 million this year. He is not getting $40 million. He is going to be taxed a ton of that money. He's probably getting closer to 22, 23, 24 million than the 40 some odd million that he's getting. That is how state taxes work. If LeBron were to play for a team such as the Indiana Pacers, that would not be the case. And then there are some states that just don't have state tax at all, and he could go play there and get more money. And we know one thing about LeBron James is that he is decently cheap with some things in his life. Obviously not with everything. The guy did open a school, but he is very known around NBA players to be cheap and never uses cellular data. He asks for Wi-Fi passwords everywhere he goes. He's very careful with minor financial things, and that is a Rich Paul thing. Rich Paul has stressed financial literacy amongst African Americans before, and he believes that people, specifically African Americans from underdeveloped communities, do not get taught financial literacy that they deserve to be taught, obviously for pretty obvious reasons. I can't speak on that. But just to continue past that part, it is something to note when discussing all of this is the financial aspect to it. LeBron's a billionaire. That didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen just because he's, at the very worst, the second best basketball player of all time. It happened because him and Rich Paul are good with money. And if this is money-backed, and this is about state tax, it gets kind of weird because the LA thing. None of this really makes sense so far. So we're just going to continue to go through it. We're going to talk about some of the clients that you see on the screen here, all of whom are Klutch clients. The two stick out of DeJounte Murray and Zach LaVine because both of them are on the trade block. However, the Knicks have not shown much interest in Zach LaVine. So really, DeJounte sticks out if the Knicks were to really be interested in him. And then you got guys like LeBron, AD, Draymond, Trae Young, Tyrese Maxey, De'Aaron Fox, Fred VanVleet, Malcolm Brogdon, Jordan Clarkson, Darius Garland, Jeremy Grant, and Colin Sexton. And I'll be honest, most of those are guards, none of whom really seem like they're going to be playing for the Knicks anytime soon. So it really just is about DeJounte Murray at that point, and I've also made it clear that I do not think the Knicks are going to trade for DeJounte Murray because it's easier to stay out of the Klutch business right now. But the Knicks need to sit down with Rich Paul and talk about this, because what if this keeps happening? What if this just goes on and on forever? You don't know who Rich Paul is going to hire in the future, or who is going to sign Rich Paul as an agent, I should say, in the future. But it definitely could become problematic when the next generation comes in, or current Knicks players. If that were to happen, that would be bad. Specifically, Jalen Brunson. However, Jalen Brunson's agent is Sam Rose, who is the son of Leon Rose, so probably Jalen's safe. But it's one of those things where you can never just... It's always going to be in the back of your head. Leon Rose likes to keep it all in the family. Rich Paul was part of the family for a while until he formed the NBA's other huge superpower in Klutch Sports. Klutch and CAA are almost undeniably the two biggest agencies in the NBA. The other one being Endeavor, and that's a completely different ballgame because they are so mixed into every single worldly aspect and are agents of so many different people, similar to CAA. I mean, Klutch to a degree also, but Klutch mainly focuses on basketball, whereas CAA represents artists of all form. They are creative artists agencies after all, so they do work with other talents such as athletes and musicians and actors. And Endeavor works with basically everyone, and on top of that owns the UFC, who is one of the professional sports leagues that mainly is located in America, which is another thing where it basically keeps going back to Leon Rose and Rich Paul as probably the two biggest agents in basketball today. So let's just take a look here. Although Klutch would be against doing business with the Knicks front office, it would help to facilitate a deal if a client desired that location, according to sources. Klutch obviously couldn't prevent a trade, but landmines are set and often detonated if a player or his camp don't want to be there. For instance, Kawhi Leonard with the San Antonio Spurs, and his uncle being a very influential figure in his life who really pushed that. Plus, the Knicks front office should have learned long ago not to underestimate Paul's influence as former CAA agents and consultants. Leon Rose and William Wesley lost the greatest client they could have ever had in LeBron James because he left with Rich Paul when Paul formed Klutch Sports. There's a very real possibility of peace between the Knicks and Klutch. As SNY reported, Paul may consider changing his posture if a meeting were coordinated and his own issues were addressed. My understanding is that both sides have been receptive to a sit-down, and it could happen soon. That's where things get weird. Why and what are Rich Paul's problems? Why does he have these problems? What has gone on in the last few years that has changed everything? Because this was not always Rich Paul's stance was, oh yeah, Leon Rose, I don't want my guys playing for him. Especially because reports have indicated that there's no beef there. It's not between Leon Rose and Rich Paul, which makes things very interesting. I mean, if you look right here, why is Klutch against dealing with the Knicks? It's the question that would undoubtedly be addressed if the two sides met because there's no real answer. The only definitive read here is that it's fixable for the sake of business and has nothing to do with the distant history between Paul and Rose and William Wesley. They used to be partners at CAA, but Paul left in 2012 to form Klutch, and that is irrelevant here. If that is irrelevant, then we are looking at a very strange situation that only Rich Paul and probably LeBron know the answers to on why there's such an anti-Knicks agenda right now with Klutch Sports. It doesn't really make sense. If it was if LeBron still played for the Heat or played for the Cavs, and they were like, no, we don't want a player going to the Knicks, that's going to affect our money because then the state taxes are crazy high. That's one thing. Not just LeBron, but as I said earlier, the two biggest clients, being LeBron and AD, both play for the Lakers, and both, despite having large contracts, are also getting a ton of that taxed because they are in California after all, which makes things very strange, and it's kind of hard to get a read on why this is all happening. I'm not really sure. I don't have the answers. I am not on the inside of this. I am just relaying the information to you guys. But if we look here, here is the history of Rich Paul and Leon Rose and LeBron. So, real quick, Rich Paul and LeBron met in an airport. They exchanged numbers because LeBron liked a jersey that Rich Paul was wearing. Rich Paul sold a few jerseys to LeBron, one of them being a Joe Namath Rams jersey. And essentially, James's childhood friends, Maverick Carter and Randy Mims, were joined by Rich Paul in his little inner circle that LeBron runs with. And he would later start working with Leon Rose, who had negotiated James's extension with the Cavs in 2006 at CAA. In 2012, Paul and James left Rose and CAA to start Klutch Sports Group, and in 2013, Paul enlisted Mark Termini to run the NBA contract negotiations in Klutch. Now, Klutch obviously has a ton of clients, and he's also accepted a position on the UTA's Board of Governors. So clearly, Rich Paul has been active in his life. He has been succeeding very well, and shout out to Rich Paul for doing so. It's just, why do you have beef with the Knicks? I don't see the point. This is the most pointless thing I've ever seen. I don't get it now. It's so strange, and the Knicks need to talk to Rich Paul in case other guys who are part of Klutch that the Knicks want become available. So the Knicks need to break this down. I don't think the Knicks are at fault. I don't think Rich Paul's at fault. I think there's some weird misunderstanding that's probably going to be real easy to get rid of once everyone forgets about this whole thing where Rich Paul's trying to block players from going to the Knicks. And Leon and William West are just like, dude, why? Like, we know each other. You worked for me for a while. A lot of what you learned came under me specifically if you're Leon Rose talking to him. And the rest of it came under the agency that I'm the head at. So why do you have beef with us? We helped you advance your career. You left and you took LeBron with you. If anything, we should be mad at you for doing that. But we're not. Like, what is going on here? Unless Leon Rose and William Wesley hit up Rich Paul and were like, hey, you took LeBron from us. Fuck you. That would obviously be a problem. And you really hope that that's not what happened. And also, that's probably the only time you guys are ever going to hear me curse on this. I haven't filmed a video in like 5-6 days. So I'm rusty right now, guys. If you look right here, that threw me off. If you look right here, James is at the centerpiece of CAA's rise to prominence in the NBA during the past 5 years. James signed with Rose in 2005. When he left, his first agent, Aaron Goodwin, 2 years later, CAA purchased Leon Rose's practice and had the right to do business with LeBron. Rose negotiated the last 2 contracts in 2006 and a 6-year deal with the Heat in 2010. James has an opt-out clause in his deal in 2014. Rose and fellow agent Henry Thomas, who represents James's Heat teammates again at the time. This is an old article, obviously. Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh worked closely together in bringing the stars together 2 years ago, representing those 3 players in addition to other top stars who at the time had recently switched teams, such as Carmelo Anthony and Chris Paul. Melo going to the Knicks and absolutely tearing it up. And then Chris Paul, who went to the Clippers and was similarly great. This is weird. It's just strange, and it's just it's hard to understand the whole situation. But look, I think this is going to get resolved. It doesn't seem like there's real legs for any of this like beef or rivalry to stand on, which means it's probably going to end pretty anticlimactically, which is exactly what you want if you're the New York Knicks. Also, if you're Klutch Sports, it's probably just helpful, though it's really not that big of a deal to Klutch. Again, they have 29 other teams that they can negotiate with, and if one of their players wants to go to New York, they could try to sell them on going to Brooklyn the same way that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving did. So it's a lot harder for the Knicks. The Knicks are the ones in the hot seat right now. They need to fix this, or this could become very problematic. And just to close you guys out with a little bit more, Rich Paul didn't know his field this way. When talking to Sports Illustrated on June 12th of 2019, he veered off after talking with the Lakers and AD for a while, as to mention the Knicks as an equally alluring destination for AD. The only difference is they don't have as many championships as the Lakers, but they got a tradition. It's a big market. Not that it's only big markets. They have cap space, flexibility. They're able to absorb more than one star. What's wrong with that? That was only a few years ago, though it was before Leon Rose, which is important to note, which makes things very difficult. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Nerlens Noel sued Rich Paul because he blamed Paul for not getting the news of him being offered a $70 million 4-year contract extension from the Dallas Mavericks the year before Noel signed with the Knicks. That was really upsetting to Noel, and then Noel ended up going to the New York Knicks. Maybe that has something to do with it, but I'm really inclined to not believe that this whole beef is because of Nerlens Noel. However, I'm not sure. We are going to see more updates in it. All that we know is that the Knicks need to resolve this before it becomes a real problem for them. I'm not worried. They're not that interested in Zach LaVine. It doesn't seem like they're chomping at the bit to land DeJounte Murray either, but you don't know what Klutch Sports clients could become available in the future who the Knicks could want. So they're better off resolving it. It's the safest thing to do, and hopefully it goes over pretty anticlimactically. As boring as that may be, it'll be best for the New York Knicks. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. It's fun to be back. I know you guys have seen me daily, but I haven't filmed a video in a while, so this was good. Sorry for cursing at the end. Have a tremendous day, and go Knicks.